Da 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 da! What's my good cheer? Welcome, welcome, everybody. I'm excited. I'm ready to get physical, even though I feel like, in the past couple of days, I did put that effort in and I felt that effort. And, I'm, I'm not that old and I didn't feel that way 6 months ago. So the only thing that's telling me is I need to bring more activity, physical activity into my life, right? You keep everything moving, right? And that's with my mother. She had rheumatoid arthritis, and her doctor always told her that movement was most important in not locking up. Not that I suspect that I'm locking up. I am grateful for my good health, but, we have to trust in those experts, those people who are in those fields where people depend on them because, right, just like any other business, it is word of mouth. The things that work, the things that don't work, right? Okay, you guys, let's just get into our word. We've had this word, right? And it is uh, a crazy word. And isn't it funny that just in this second, I lost it, but it'll come back. I trust. I trust that it'll come back. Isn't that amazing the way, because of how I was going to bring the topic of trust up, right? For the next couple of days, I think, because I don't think we give ourselves enough credit. And that looking perspective, experience, I think it should be in trusting in ourselves, trusting that if you lose it for a second, right? So, like my sister said to me, I was on my Chatters Live, my Sunday night show that I do. And it's pretty casual and it's fun. And we come in and sometimes there's movement in there, but that's not the intent. It's to connect with people and really spend a little time just in conversation and in getting to know people. Andrew. And maybe, yes, of course, Andrew was in that live that night. And I didn't get it until after the live show. And that was when my sister, in the comments, she pops into my live shows every once in a while, and in the comments, and she's yapping away, and all of a sudden there's just one word with an exclamation mark: squirrel. This was the word with the exclamation mark. And so finally I get down to that comment. I'm going, squirrel? What is she talking about? That squirrel is that ADHD, as highly sensitive and empaths. You might not know this, right? It might give you a little bit of explanation to certain traits that you have, and that is, right? They call it getting distracted by the shiny, right? It is trauma based trait that we do have, and it's a looking for the escape route. It's when we have those seconds when we go blank, right? That's when we have to trust ourselves that, maybe we won't remember what we forget, but we have to trust that we'll be able to move past that and carry on into the conversation or even a different conversation if need be. Sometimes those are the 180s. Sometimes they're the 90 degrees. Those are the ones that really hurt. Those are the, right? Those right hand, you're going like this way, and next thing you know, you're going like this. But the 360s are terrible too. And my sister Tracy taught me all about the 360s. The 360 is not change in any way. A 360 is going right back to the start. And we do that lots here. And that's okay to go to the start because, in the beginning, that start and that roundabout, could take us 2 years. But in those 2 years, you pick up lessons and you're not getting absolutely everything wrong, right? We're getting a few things wrong. And if we're lucky, right, it's uncomfortable. It hurts a little bit. It's a little bit heartbreaking. It's a little bit frustrating. And those are the signals to remind us of that moment because we don't like those moments, right? We try really hard not to do those moments in repeat, right? Those are the lessons. So the next time you get that 360 and you find yourself at the very beginning, you failed yourself, you're right there where you started again. Maybe it won't take you 2 years this time to do that whole route. Maybe it'll only take you a year and a half because you were able to pick up some lessons along the way. You were able to learn from your mistakes. You bumped in and had conversations with interesting characters who, right, just so happen to come across your path, right? And this is what we have to trust in. And I know this little bit of trust, and this little bit of trust comes from my childhood, comes from a very young age, in that time when I didn't have a lot of influence in my life. That, we were kids that were kind of left to their own demise. We were feral. We had adventures, and grateful for my curiosity, grateful that I was the eldest of the kids, that I was able to have a little bit more rope because I had to oversee the others, right? I had to make sure that everybody else was safe and everybody else was doing okay, right? I lost it again. And that's the trailing off. Those are the side branches, right? Those are the side branches, and you're going to see me do it again in trusting that we're going to go back into that caregiverships and these lessons that we learn as children. And we learn lots of different lessons, right? But it's all based around our safety. See how smooth that was? And I have no idea where I was leaving off. But sometimes those are just the readjustments in the pathway because we are trailing down a side branch and we're saying, hey, stop. This isn't the topic of discussion in this moment. This is. And it brings us back to the main branch to understand, right? A little bit better in trusting in ourselves, trusting that everything is going to be okay, trusting that when my sister, see, when it's meant to, when my sister shouts out in the comments, squirrel, that's for me to take note. That's because in that uncomfortableness, in that being called on, right? In somebody noticing something that I've always noticed in myself, but in those disguises, in those covering up what we don't feel comfortable with, that we don't want the world to see, right? Because that's where it comes. That's that memory loss, and it comes directly from trauma, and it does. Hello, Andrew. I know you're there. Happy 4th of July to you. You came in and celebrated our holiday. Did you put the flag in the window like you said you were going to do? Andrew, let me know in the comments if that's what you did, right? So the next couple of days, we're just going to talk about trusting ourselves, right? Especially when you're in social media, when you're trying to make an impact, when you're influencing others, where your actions, like my actions as caregiver for my sisters, right? That was being reflected in the way that they moved. And I had no idea as a child that I was an influence to somebody. And it wasn't an influence by choice, it was an influence out of necessity. It was an influence out of, right, to adapt and conquer, to survive, to not get in trouble, not looking for a compliment, not looking for a good job, but just looking not to get in trouble for something that we didn't get right. Let me have my sip of my coffee. This is supposed to be a short one, and I haven't even touched into the subject of trusting in ourselves. it's in that independence and necessity sometimes that we learn, right? To trust ourselves, because sometimes that's all we have, right? For a very long time in my life, even in this moment, I find that I make movement all by myself, right? Because I understand it's just gonna hold me up in the end, because I'm not bumping into people, right, on a consistent basis where I can have these conversations and I want to go off and hang out with people and invest that time when I can invest that time in myself, invest my time in my brand and showing up here, right? So there are choices to make along the way, most definitely, right? And I understand that. And I understand that it's going to be by my choices that I'm either going to accomplish some of these goals, dreams, ambitions that I have, these desires that I have for myself, right? But I don't really have a choice at this point, because there's something else there besides goals, dreams, ambitions, and desires. There's a calling. There's the follow me. There's the everything's going to be okay. You can trust yourself. You can do this, Cindy. Oh my goodness, you had no idea. And then have questions that I've had my entire life be revealed to me, and be able to have a little bit of compassion for some of the characters who had no idea of what was going on. And then some amazing people who thought they were the be all to end all, who were actually, right, the instigators of their own demise, because in the end we all feel what we don't understand. We all feel that lack of knowledge, we feel that lack of effort, we feel that lack of commitment, we feel that guilt, we feel that shame, we feel, you guys, right? But sometimes we're feeling too much into that which makes us feel uncomfortable. And that doesn't mean to ignore, that means to delve in a little bit deeper so we can better understand, have a little bit more compassion for those characters, right? To be able to just forgive and forget, right? And if you know me, I'm not big on turning the other cheek. But I understand sometimes, right? If you don't have something nice to say, sometimes it is better not to say anything, right? Not to stir the pot, not to trigger, right? Right? We can trust ourselves in this journey that I've been on. I'm calling it a journey, but this experiment in my life, right? Because I got nothing better to do. We all have something better to do. We just don't know what that something is. And how do we know unless we trust in something, right? And I didn't have too much to trust in my life, right? The evidence and the direction that my life took was the evidence as to how good of a job I was doing. But like I said, sometimes in getting those 360s and starting over again, you do pick up lessons. So sometimes those 360s become easier to deal with. Sometimes you can fly through sections because you've done that one and you did pretty good on that one, but you did pretty poopy on this one. And this one will make it so you will always end up at the 360. But there's movement, right? In that 360, if you're just getting the last minute wrong, you're getting everything right. You're going right to that end, and then you drop a foot away from that finish line. How much did you accomplish? How much did you get right? How much did you influence? How much did you impact, right? Not just yourself, but being the evidence in that, right? And so you look at not finishing, you look at hitting that 360 and starting at the start line again, and you look at yourself and you beat yourself up, but you don't realize it's not taking you 2 years to do that circumference, right? Just to fall flat on your face 1 foot before crossing that finish line, right? You did that in 2 minutes. You did that in 2 minutes. Okay, you didn't quite make it over the finish line. But take a look at that foot. Take a look. Take a look at that foot. Take a look at that foot that could be in the moment, in the present, in the past, or something that you're stepping into in the future, right? And maybe you can find, right? Maybe you can only find 10 inches. That, hey, you're still 10 inches closer to the finish line, right? Remember, sometimes it took you 2 years to do that circumference. Now you're doing it in 2 minutes. You're still failing, but you're doing it in 2 minutes, right? But how much have you learned in that in order to be able to do that in 2 minutes? Maybe the lesson is to continue doing that in those 2 minutes, because now you're not working at how fast you're doing it. You're looking at the quality of how you're doing it. Ooh, there's a good one. Okay, you guys, I've got to take off. We're touching on trust, and we're touching on trust in the way it reflects in our own lives, right? In that connection with ourselves, that quite often, right? We don't like ourselves. And when we don't like ourselves, we allow other people to compound that belief that we're not worthy, right? Not just worthy to be liked, but just worthy. And what a way to go about your life, right? Where's the movement in that? Okay, you guys, back tomorrow. Bye-bye.